I'm Erin Brown.
Hi, I'm Nick Arfanuni.
And you're listening to Nasty Women Radio. How are you, Nick?
I am wonderful, weathering the California rain, which is always interesting and lovely, and a nice little refreshing change to the constant perfect weather.
I saw you were lifting in rain.
Yes, it was raining, and I was like, I came here to bench, so
Perfect.
just gonna fucking deal with it. And people always ask the owner of the gym where I go to because most of it's outdoors. They always ask, what do you guys do when it rains? And his canned response is, why does it matter? And I was like, well, that's actually a good point because it rarely rains. And if it does, we figure it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is
Anyway,
there no indoor space or just not enough indoor space?
There's a small, it's like a garage.
Okay.
And there's a lot of indoor space. It's just like that's where they have the classes.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the class is like taking up all that space and you're not taking class, you're just benching, which is all I do now, then there's not really any room for you in there. So you get stuck outside in the rain.
Perfect.
It's fine. I did pull-ups in the rain too. It's fine. It's fine. A little rain never hurt anybody.
No.
But it's why my hair is up today because my hair got all wet and I don't like to wash it. So
Good for you. Team no wash.
yeah. Yeah. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm so good. I just gave my husband his Christmas present early,
You couldn't wait.
which
Couldn't
was
wait.
boudoir photos.
Yeah.
And I had to give them to him early because it's not something that I wanted to give in front of family, though he was like, my mom would totally love these, and she probably would, but I didn't want that. I wanted that to be an intimate scenario reaction. And also because the next to Christmas time that it would have been a good idea to give it to him, I would have been at the highest chance of pregnancy. And so due to family schedules and my ovulation schedule, I went ahead and gave it to him early.
I love that. I love
An
that.
implied hangout.
There's a total implied hangout. And I know that you and I are on the same birth control method,
Yes.
which is track ovulation.
Yes.
So, yeah. People always say to me, they're like, you have to be in touch with your ovulation if you're trying to get pregnant. And I'm like, you also have to be in touch with your ovulation if you're trying not to get pregnant.
Right, both valuable pursuits.
So that actually is a wonderful intro into what we're discussing today, which is this is Period Podcast Part 2. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't already, definitely listen to episode 1, Part 1 of Period Talk, and where we discussed our personal menstrual cycles, the evolution of it, how we first got our periods, and how we choose to capture our menses. Was pretty much the gist of that.
Is it weird that I get like oddly excited when you say the phrase capture our menses?
That's why I keep saying it. I know that you like it.
It's up there with mound holding for me.
Mound holding is a big one for me. I'm a big mound holder. Those of you that don't know what we're talking about, when you listen to our masturbation episode, it will become apparent.
Yeah, we'll just leave it out there for now.
Let's just leave it out there. You can just kind of guess as to what you think it means.
So I have to be honest, you keep talking about how you know so many grown women that don't know a whole lot about their cycle and that they think their cycle starts the first day of their period and or that it's only the 7 days or whatever of their period. And every time you say stuff like that, I'm like, yeah. And in my head, I'm like, she knows way more about that than me. So please tell me about what's happening to my body.
Oh, okay. Well, it's so funny because this is not the stuff they teach. Like, they don't teach you this. There's no class for this. There's no, like, I don't know what it was like for you, but sex ed for me was like, this is how, there's a penis, there's a vagina, there's sperm, there's an egg. It gets fertilized. Don't do it. Like, that was pretty much the gist of it for me. And nobody really taught me about my period to the point where, like, when I was growing up and as a teenager and as a young adult, and I would honestly say, like, up until a few years ago, where I wasn't on hormonal birth control, my period always came as a surprise. It was always like, oh, I'm having cramps. I wonder if I'm getting my period. There's the blood. Yes, I'm getting my period. Whereas now I'm like, I know that today I'm on day 20 and I'm probably going to get my period between day 26 and 28. And it changes based on the moon cycle. And I know that's when I'm going to get it and I'm totally prepared for it. And it doesn't really surprise me anymore. And I think that we're not taught that. We're not taught about a 28-day cycle. We're not taught that actually anywhere between 21 and 30 days, I believe, is considered a normal cycle. And some people have shorter cycles and some people have longer cycles. But I think what a lot of women don't know is that the day that you start menstruating is both the last and the first day of your cycle. And that's something that we're just like, it's one of those like mind fucks. You're like, what is that? What does that mean? But if you start menstruating, let's say on day 28, that's 20 days after the day you started menstruating or 28 days after the day you started menstruating on the last cycle. So we think, like, I was always taught, or always just like led to believe as a teenager and as a young adult that I would get my period every 4 weeks, right? Once a month.
Yeah.
And then there were definitely cycles where I had 2 periods in 1 month. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like, it's not what's supposed to happen, but that absolutely can happen if you actually look at the cyclical nature of your menstrual cycle. So day 1, let's say I start my period today and I was on my 28th day of my cycle. It's also my first day of my next cycle. And I count today till the next time I get my menses. Let's say that's 26 days from now. That's day 26 and it shifts back to day 1. So if we can kind of keep track of that and realize that our cycle starts and ends pretty much on the same day, we can get a lot more in touch with our menstrual cycle. It just takes all the confusion out of it, right? Because I don't know about you, like I was really confused about it for a long time.
Well, my method of tracking my period was have a period and then wait about a month to what, feels like a month.
Right, right.
And then get tender boobs and freak out that I'm probably pregnant. And try to remember if there was anything else noteworthy happening when I bled last to figure out how long ago that was. Freak out that I must be pregnant, then get my period and feel better about it. And that's like until there was actually an app that I downloaded on my phone to track my period. I did not track it. And now I am much less neurotic about feeling pregnant all the time, which is apparently my favorite pastime.
I have wasted so many pregnancy tests. I cannot even tell you. I used to just like stockpile them. And my husband would always be like, Meg, you're not pregnant. Like, it's impossible. It's impossible for you to be pregnant based on our circumstances. Like, why do you always think you're pregnant? And I'm like, I don't know. I've been like PMSing for 10 days. That's totally out of the norm for me. Like, I should have gotten my period by now. And I would just keep taking pregnancy tests and they would keep being negative to the point where I actually finally went to my gynecologist, and who I've since fired because she's just not for me. And I was just like, I don't know what's happening. I'm PMSing for like 12 days. I'm like, there's all this like crazy hormonal stuff going on. My breasts are so tender that I can't even walk down the stairs. And I have to wear and I'm an A cup. So for my breasts to be that tender to wear, like I have to wear 3 sports bras to the gym is like ridiculous. And so she says to me, well, are you on birth control? And I was like, bitch, I'm not on birth control. You took out my IUD. You're my gynecologist. Like, you don't even know about me.
You're on
like,
black market birth control.
Yeah. She just walked in and was like, so what's up with you? I was like, she didn't look at my chart or anything. I was like, no, I haven't been on birth control. At this time, I hadn't been on birth control for about a year. And she was like, well, and at the time, I think I was 30. And she said, well, I have to tell you that, and then she says, are you trying to get pregnant? And I said, no. I wasn't actively not trying to get pregnant, but I also wasn't trying to get pregnant. And she was like, are you having unprotected sex? And I was like, yeah, I'm married. Like, I mean, we always have unprotected sex. And she was like, okay, well, I have to tell you that anytime you have unprotected sex and you're not on birth control, there's a risk of pregnancy. And I was like, am I in elementary school right now? I was like, do you think that I don't know that? that was the beginning for me of realizing that I needed to get a lot more in touch with my cycle and really understand when I was ovulating, have a better understanding, journal about like how my PMS was, how my actual menstruation went, how many days it was, the flow, what ovulation felt like. And I've done that for the last 3-4 years. And now I can tell you when I'm about to ovulate, and I can actually feel the ovulation happening, and I can tell you which side I'm ovulating from. And it's such an interesting thing to be that in touch with your body that I never would have imagined was possible for me, because nobody even told me that was a possibility.
Is it terrible that when you're talking about that, I'm thinking of, like, I'm picturing you with the pen from Clueless with, like, the puff ball at the end and, like, a fuzzy, like, lock, like, keep out my period diary.
I know. That's exactly what I do.
Perfect.
That's exactly what I do. I'm Cher Horowitz in this scenario. I'm absolutely Cher Horowitz.
So our period app has those options too, and I started tracking when I was having breast tenderness, because I always had sort of expected that precluded my period, such that it would be like my boobs are sore and then the next day I would have my period, which was not the case. I also recently learned from a sexologist friend of mine who's always posting things that make me mad, actually, because they're like basic information about our biology that I'm like, how did I miss that? That would have been good to know. That when you're ovulating, it's typical for a woman to have what's called a wet wipe, where you go into the bathroom and a slick wipe, is what she calls it. And there's like a little bit of like clear, lovely.
It's like a viscous, like a very viscous sort of sticky discharge. Like if you were to put it between your fingers and sort of like open your fingers up, and it would kind of like stick a little bit. It's like a sticky discharge. Yeah. And that's sort of your pre-ovulation. That's your pre-ovulation stage. And what a lot of people don't realize is that you can get pregnant not just when you ovulate. The purpose of that discharge is to trap sperm. So that is the purpose of that discharge is to trap the sperm, so the sperm can stay alive after ovulation. So let's say you know exactly when you ovulate and you're like, okay, totally be careful, no unprotected sex this day, whatever the case may be. And then you're like, okay, tomorrow I'm good. That's not necessarily true, because for most women, there's about a 4-day period in each cycle where conception is possible. And a lot of it has to do with that discharge. So
it's really valuable information.
It is. It's very valuable information, because not only does it alert you to the fact that, okay, I'm about to ovulate, but it gives you this information that this is when, if I don't want to get pregnant or I do want to get pregnant, this is the period where I either do or don't have sex. And in our case, it's when we have anal sex.
Your case. So
yeah.
Are we talking about that today?
Well, we can. I mean,
okay, maybe we table that for another day. But that's another thing about you that I feel like I'm a student of your anal sex life.
We will do a whole episode about anal sex, because inquiring anuses want to know.
They really do. After we talked in Kansas City, was it in Kansas City that we had the long anal sex talk? I came home and told my husband all of the things. I was like, there's a method that I didn't know. Yeah.
There's a whole situation that has to happen for that. But
we'll put a
pin in it. So during ovulation, I don't know about you, but I actually ovulate. So I usually ovulate between like day 11 and day 14. I ovulate with the full moon and I menstruate with the new moon. So that's usually when I know that, like, it's not necessarily always going to be exactly day 11 to 14. It might be day 10 to 13 or whatever the case may be, based on the moon cycle. And what I started realizing is when I was menstruating, and then I was like, why am I menstruating so early? Like, I'm 3 days early. That's weird. When I started looking at the moon cycles, I realized that it's because that's when the full moon was. So I was menstruating with the full moon. And did I say that right? No, I think I whatever.
You ovulate with the full moon and menstruate.
I ovulate with the full moon and menstruate with the new moon, because I know you're opposite.
I'm opposite.
Yeah. So both are wonderful. And both are totally normal. And it's because if it wasn't, then every woman would be on the exact same cycle, right? We'd all be collectively having our menses at the same time.
Which is also a thing that happens to women that spend a lot of time together. And for me, this is a random tangent perhaps, but that's always been like when people have the biology argument that something's wrong with homosexuality because two men and two women cannot procreate, right? And I'm like, well, one, men have a prostate, so there's like some biology that says that's going to be a good time. And women menstruate together, spend a lot of time together, which is only really advantageous if you're having sex with one another.
Absolutely.
Otherwise,
Absolutely.
it's just like somebody you can text about it, I guess.
Yeah. So you're on your period too, I guess.
I menstruate with Jen Sinclair, and it's actually not so great because I'll see her like put something up online about her period and then freak out like, oh, am I late? So her period just makes me feel pregnant.
She says the same thing to me anytime I usually tweet about ovulation. That's that's actually the only time I use Twitter. To talk about ovulation, to talk about vaginas and vulvas, or to post Parks and Recreation quotes. Like that's pretty much, so if any of that interests you, that's what I do on Twitter. But Jen will see it and she'll say, oh shit, I'm going to be menstruating soon then if you're ovulating, because we're opposite. So it doesn't matter where you are, how long your cycle is, how short your cycle is, whatever the case may be. What matters is that you get in touch with your own cycle, which I should mention is next to impossible if you're on hormonal birth control. Because depending on what kind of birth control you're on, you might not be ovulating, you might be ovulating, you might be not releasing certain types of hormones, releasing higher levels of hormones, lower. It just depends on what type of hormonal birth control you're on. But even then, you can still feel the symptoms. Let's say you don't get a period or you don't ovulate or whatever the case may be. Your body will still give you the symptoms. So it is something you can still kind of get understanding of the cycle, but really only fully connect to it if you're not on hormonal birth control, which I mention because, again, your body, your choice, always. I will never judge what another woman chooses to do with her body, regardless of what it is. But I think that there is a lot of value in getting off hormonal birth control and getting in touch with your cycle, and it requires more work. And it requires more commitment and more focus. But I have never felt better in my own body in my entire life than the last 3-4 years where I've been off hormonal birth control.
Same, but so much so that I'm actually a little bit jealous of women for whom just like a run-of-the-mill pill, works fine for them, or they experience like less cramping and less mood swings and whatever, because it just was not a positive experience for me at all. And so this is more work, and I'm happy about having the understanding of my body that I do now. But to be honest, a little bit jealous for the people who that's just simplifying things for, like they take the placebo pills. And also, like, I just was terrible at taking birth control, even if I set a phone alarm. So I was always having to like double up and do all the tricks and cross my fingers and
which things. And I know a lot of women who have horrible experiences with birth control. So if it works for you, that's fucking fantastic. That's why modern medicine exists. And I think that's wonderful. But if it doesn't work for you, just know that there is another option. Like birth control and IUDs are not your only hormonal birth control, I should say, and IUDs and things of that nature are not your only options for birth control, for avoiding conception. Like there is another way. And again, it will take more commitment. But if you are a woman out there listening who has had horrible experiences with birth control and can't find the one that works for you, I know a lot of women who just like, it sets their hormones off like crazy, women who gain tons of weight, women who break out like crazy, women with whom I remember when I was in my 20s, early 20s, I was on a birth control that I menstruated for 3 weeks. for 3 weeks. And I was like, this is not okay. Like what my body is rejecting this. This isn't working for me. But I know other women who take birth control. And, when I had my IUD, I had the best experience. I never got a period, which at the time I thought was amazing. But in retrospect, I look at it and I feel like I really kind of like missed out on that whole experience, but I'm getting it now, so it's fine. But at the time I didn't want to have to deal with it. I didn't want to get a period. I didn't want to have to think about taking a pill. I didn't have any adverse effects at all. No bloating, no breakouts, no excessive bleeding, no spotting even. I got the symptoms of menstruation. I got like swollen breasts, a little bit of bloating and stuff like that before when I would have menstruated, but I didn't have a period for 5 years and I had a wonderful experience. So for some people, and then I know other people who have had IUDs and had horrible experiences.
I had an IUD that attacked me.
Yeah, it happens. And they can embed into your uterine wall in a way that's really not fun. I mean,
and it's such a genius form of birth control. I mean, if I was like gonna list like top 10 things from my experience I would recommend, it would have been that until I remember I was at work one night and I just had these terrible pains that felt like maybe stomach cramps, but I couldn't locate it. And it was so bad that I was just like talking to my coworkers about it, even though that wasn't necessarily the relationship I had with them. And everybody, of course, their answer, which would be mine if my daughter was having that experience, was like, do you have to poop? So I just kept...
Is it gas?
Right.
It might be gas.
Which gas is like the worst pain in the world. Yeah. That is the worst when I have gas and somebody's like, do you just need to fart? And I'm like, no, I'm dying. That's a terrible pain. But so then I would go to the bathroom and nothing would happen. And I remember one time I was sitting in the bathroom and like bearing down, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I located the pain as in my uterus as opposed to like a stomach cramp situation and was like, oh my God. So I went and had it removed and looked in the trash when I was leaving, and the little like strings that come down were like turned the opposite way and like just like literally attacking me.
Oh.
Which I don't think, I don't know anybody else who's had that experience, so I'm sure there are other people who have.
Yeah.
But that wasn't cool. And I thought that I lucked out because even though the insurance that I had at the time, which is now illegal, I believe, wouldn't cover birth control, they gave me any birth control I wanted for free after I had a baby. I guess they figure it's cheaper to pay for birth control if we know that you're actually going to have a baby.
That is so interesting. That's that prerequisite. I have a couple friends who had, I don't want to butcher it because I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it's either like impacted or embedded. There's a word for what happens when like your IUD actually like attaches itself in an unhealthy way. It's a toxic relationship with your uterus. And I know women, dear friends of mine, who have had to have it removed and said that they could feel it like scraping through their uterus as they had to remove it. And I just got lucky and I had the easiest situation with it and easy insertion, easy removal, no problem. So if you're considering that is, just keep in mind that everybody's experience is very different. But being a woman now who's been off birth control for several years and like that feeling, I never feel more like a woman than when I can feel myself ovulating. Like I can actually feel my life source, like the life source that my body creates being released for possible consideration. Like it is the most amazing feeling. It's such the pinnacle of womanhood for me when I feel that. And I should mention, like, if you're wondering what that feels like, if about halfway through your cycle, you start to feel like what might kind of feel like menstrual cramps, it's actually, there's a name for it. It's called Mittelschmerz. Isn't that a great word? It's German for middle pain. And it's the sort of uterine ovarian situation that happens when your body is getting ready to ovulate and is releasing an egg. So if you feel like low back, mid or low abdomen pain, some cramping, a little bit of bloating, that's ovulation. And if you feel sort of when you actually ovulate, it feels sort of like a tug, like a sharp tug. Like if you imagine you had a string attached to your ovary, and it was, hanging down and somebody pulled on it and it gave kind of a sharp feeling of being pulled on. That's a terrible fucking explanation.
I thought it was beautiful. I'm in. Keep going.
Yeah. That is your egg actually being released. So I know a lot of women who know which side they ovulated from when their children were conceived. And I find that to be really interesting as well. And for me, the moment of ovulation usually happens when I'm at CrossFit. I don't know if there's if being active stimulates the ovulation, but it's like we'll be on the rower and I'm like, there it goes. I'm like, there goes my egg, here for your consideration. But for me, actually, ovulation is more painful and just overall, I get more cramping, more bloating, more discomfort, and more emotional around ovulation than I do around menstruation.
So if I were a woman who is not currently tracking my period and on the, oh shit, I might be pregnant method of tracking things, where would you suggest starting with tracking symptoms? What would you do?
Well, that would fall under the assumption that you're not on hormonal birth control. Yeah. And so that being the case, the best thing you can do is track your first day of menses. And again, that might mean that you have to wait a couple weeks. If you're listening to this now and you're like, well, I just had my period. If you can remember what day that was, great. That's where you start. If you can't remember, wait for the next one and track the first day of menstruation. And I know you said you use an app, and I know Jen uses an app too. What app do you use?
I use My Period Calendar.
Okay.
I think there are other ones that are more interesting. There's one that I used for a minute where when you put in a symptom, it would show you like the statistics of other people who are on the same cycle as you and what symptoms they were having at that time, which is kind of interesting. But this is the first interface I used, and I just really needed to go back to it because I liked it. Yes. I like it because I can track all kinds of symptoms, and I track significant moods when I notice them, any kind of breast tenderness, because that's when I like to think that I'm pregnant. But anything noticeable I put in there so that I can look for trends, and it alerts me when I'm going to be ovulating soon, and it alerts me when my period should be happening soon, which is nice because then I can just prepare myself for those things.
Absolutely. And I think that tracking more than just like when you menstruate and when you ovulate, tracking your moods, tracking what's happening in your life that might be causing stress, if you've had a sudden change of environment or a sudden change in diet or hydration, all of these things can affect your menstrual cycle. So what I came to find out later on, no thanks to my my gynecologist who treated me like a child, what I came to find out later on was that I was at a period of like a high level emotional stress at that time. And when I'm under a lot of stress, my PMS goes from 3 days to 12 days. Sometimes it can even be where the day after I'm done with the ovulation phase, I start PMSing. So if I'm under like a severe amount of emotional stress, or if my nutrition is off, or if I'm not sleeping enough, my PMS lengthens. And that's something that I know about myself. So I'm not freaked out about it anymore when it happens. I'm not wasting any more pregnancy tests. So that's good.
They do sell them at the Dollar Tree though. Hot tip.
Okay, but are they like expired? How does that work?
No, I mean, they worked for me when I was pregnant, and then all the times that I wasn't, I just have a basket of them.
I mean, there are a lot of good pregnancy tests. Yeah, there are a lot of good things. I mean, I get all my altar candles at the Dollar Tree.
Oh yeah,
they're literally $1.
Yeah,
but being in the store is a little stressful for me.
Yeah, especially this time of year around the holiday season.
And everything smells like cleaning solution.
It's clean.
Have you ever noticed that? Everything smells like cleaning solution. I always feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience when I'm like at the 99-cent store of the Dollar Tree. It's the strangest thing. But anyway, I digress. If you're wondering where to start with menstruation. It's the easiest because it's tangible, right? Because you're bleeding. So it's like, oh, there's my period blood. Now this is day one. Mm-hmm. And then track how you feel every day going forward. It helps to use an app. Like you said, you use My Period Calendar. I think there's another one called IP. There's a bunch of these different menstrual cycle apps that I think are really important because they give you this, they give you the information. You don't have to just try to like figure it out for yourself and go, oh, well, I wonder if this is normal or if this is what's happening. You can just kind of, you know, plug and play and figure out what's going on. And then you just have it there. And so you always know what's going on. So if you ask me at any given time, I can tell you, oh, I'm on day X of my cycle. And I think that there's something really powerful in that because it sort of gives you this like dominion over your body as opposed to being a victim of your menstrual cycle, right, which I think so many women feel that they are. And I know I felt that way in my past, like a victim of the cycle, of just, you know, dreading it, of feeling like it was miserable. And now I feel like I have this dominion over it where I feel powerful knowing what's happening and being in touch with it.
Right. And particularly just knowing that what you're experiencing is normal for you. You know? Because like I said, in my days of constantly thinking I was pregnant, I had no idea when the last time I menstruated was. I think I thought that breast soreness was just for pregnancy as opposed to something that I experience every month. And when I started tracking, realized when that was happening and how severe it was. And you can rank all of those things in an app. Also, I can check off in there when I have sex, if it's protected or not. And if I had an orgasm is one of the options on there, which is nice to track your orgasms. I like that.
Wow. I actually just read a book that was talking about like just the whole female anatomy and the female sexual experience. And it was really interesting because for a long time, ancient cultures believed that like a woman's orgasm was unnecessary because it doesn't lead to conception, right? Only a man's orgasm leads to conception. So evolution did not select for the female orgasm, apparently. Unnecessary. But I find that really interesting because I feel like that is like the seed, every pun intended, of patriarchy. In our society, in that like a man's orgasm is more important than a woman's because a man's orgasm can produce offspring.
Right.
So I know you mentioned something we were talking earlier before we were recording. You mentioned in certain ancient cultures that menstrual blood was used to control women.
Well, so that changed. It used to be that the menstrual cycle was revered as life-giving and powerful, and specifically the blood itself was thought to cure all kinds of ailments, including plague. And if you were able to capture a woman's first menses, that was like the golden elixir that cured all. So it was like the sacred thing that powerful women got to do. And then as we decided that women should not be powerful and men should be, that became a gross thing that nobody should talk about. Freud specifically, we love Freud and his psychology. Freud believes that the period, the menstrual blood, was bleeding for lack of penis. Like it was like your body being sad it didn't have a penis, and that it was further evidence of our bodies being disgusting.
So it was like a mourning.
Yes.
It was a mourning period.
I'm so sad for my lack of penis. Even though I have a clitoris with far more nerve endings than the entire genitalia of a dude. But it's fine.
My gosh.
Really I want to pee standing up, so I bleed about it.
Well, there was this whole sort of scientific belief that a woman's organs, a woman's genitals, her sex organs, were considered shameful because they weren't external. They were internal, and a man's organs were external, which makes them, you know, proud and powerful, and a woman's shameful. And it's actually where a lot of the terminology for genitalia, the Latin terminology, comes from. So, it's actually incorrect. Like, the clitoris is the clitoris is the female equivalent, the bioidentical equivalent of a man's penis. And it's not tucked in. And not all vulvas are tucked in. So, so, we have just as much external. Ours just isn't like front and center. Ours is a little bit more subtle.
Right.
So there is some subtlety there.
Well, and speaking of etymology, one of my favorite recent learnings was that cunt used to mean powerful woman. And there are a lot of beautiful words, including kindness, that are derivative of cunt. But again, when we shifted from women being powerful to meek and men being powerful, then cunt became this like nastiest word that you could call a woman as opposed to meaning powerful. And I love that word. I know you share that with me. Yep. And vagina, the etymology of that means sheath for a sword. So the word that we've been calling our parts, even though it's not accurate, because usually when we say vagina, we're talking about vulvas.
Yeah.
Literally means like where the penis goes.
Wow.
Offensive on so many levels, and makes me really like keep going back to like let's go back to cunt. Let's go back to this powerful, great word. It's like pointy and like, yes. That feels so much better than sheath for a sword. Like, no, boo, no. This is not my crying that I don't have a penis. This is not where the dick goes. This is my powerful place. Where what did you say? My life force? You said something so much more beautiful than me saying not where the dick goes.
I think I said something about the fact that my body creates a life force that can be like offered for consideration or not. It can go either way. It doesn't have to happen that way. So I think that part of the reason why I know you and I really wanted to talk about periods was not just to educate, which I hope we have done a little bit. I hope if you came into this podcast not really knowing about when you're ovulating or not really understanding your menstrual cycle, that you did learn something. I feel like there's so much more I could talk about, especially as it pertains to like menstrual stagnancy and all these different things. But what Erin and I hope is that for those of you listening, you start to feel called to be connected to your menstrual cycle in a way that lends you power. Because if we're going to be talking about empowering women, then we need to bring this discussion of menstruation into the conversation in a way that bears no shame and in a way that bears no, feeling of disgust or a need to be hidden, because it is your life force. It is something very powerful that is not something to be ashamed of, and something that if we can learn to wield that with power rather than shame, I think that's where we can really start to step into this empowered space.
Yeah, and hopefully in normalizing this conversation, if that's not something that you want to post on Facebook about like we do, because everyone's life, everyone doesn't choose to make their life as public as we have chosen to.
Yeah.
But I hope that means that even if it's just with one of your friends, that you're talking about this stuff. Because the thing about shame is that it means everything gets to be hidden. And so all of this stuff, like being afraid you're pregnant or afraid you're not, both of which are really big and have large impacts for your life, becomes something really shameful. Or I remember just finding out that like blood clots were something that other people experience, and I thought I was probably dying for about the first 10 years of my period.
Yeah, because if you don't talk about it with someone, with anyone that you trust to hold that space for you, then you don't know that there are all different kinds of normal. Right. Or you don't know that maybe what you're experiencing could actually be considered a health risk or a health issue. For example, menstrual blood, a healthy menstrual blood that doesn't have any sort of stagnation is bright red. So if you've been having a lot of menses that's dark, that's sort of brownish, and that's not just when you're spotting, because you can have that brownish sort of spotting, right? That's totally normal, especially on the tail end of your menses. But when you first, like day 1 and day 2 of menstruation, if that blood isn't bright red, then it's likely that there is some uterine stagnancy. happening. And we store a lot of energy in our sexual organs. And that can be a sign that there needs to be something needs to be flushed out. So that's just another thing to consider. Like if you've always had a brownish menstrual cycle and or menses, and nobody's ever told you about that, and you've never talked about it, then you would never know.
Right.
That was something. And there are ways that you can deal with that. And two of those things just right off the top of my head are being uterine massage, which you can have somebody. Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
So you can actually go have it performed on you by a lot of female organ type healers will do this kind of stuff, and they'll teach you how to do it yourself so that you can then do it on your own on a regular basis. But I think a lot of people don't realize that the uterus actually moves, and it's not like stuck in its one little space, and it is sort of a malleable, movable organ. So if you can start to learn to massage your uterus, you can work out some of that stagnancy. So if you have, if you skip periods a lot, if you have dark or brownish menses, if you only have like one day of menstruation and you feel like that wasn't enough, like where did the rest of it go? You know, if there's any kind of issue where if you have amenorrhea, which obviously can be a lot of nutrient deficiency as well, but a lot of times what needs to happen is the uterus needs to be stimulated. So massage can help release a lot of that, and with it, a lot of emotional pain as well. And you might know about this as well, but mugwort is an herb that has been used for centuries to stimulate the uterus. So that they actually used to use it to perform abortions. So don't use it if you're pregnant or if you're trying to get pregnant.
Hat tip.
Absolutely not. Hat tip. Do not use, and pay close attention when you're pregnant. If you're drinking any herbal teas or consuming herbs of any kind, mugwort is an absolute no-no during that time, but it can stimulate and has been known for centuries to be used for women who have stagnant periods.
I want a uterine massage. What if my uterus is sad?
I mean, honestly, I think you could probably Google it and I guarantee you, I've not done this, but I guarantee you there is at least a YouTube video out there that shows you how to do uterine massage. And as we all know, if you watch a YouTube video, you're an expert. Totally. So if you can watch that, then you can be like a uterine massage expert.
Yeah, I will do that.
I mean, that's how I
learned my husband do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know how I learned how to do things before YouTube.
I don't remember what it was that you were inventing recently, but you're always inventing things, and I came up with an invention that hopefully someone will take and run with, because I'm not going to do it. But I think it would be amazing if there was an app for partners to track periods. Because I have this friend whose husband is so much more in touch with her cycle than she is. And I don't know if he's cheating and has an actual app that he's been doing this with, but every day that every first day of her period, she comes downstairs, first and last day, thank you. She comes downstairs and there's like a piece of dark chocolate and like some tea or something. He's like sets things out for her and gives her a present on the first day of her menses. Right? And I remember she said that, like, the first time he did it, she got what it was for, but was, like, wrong, and she got her period, like, an hour later. Like, he's more in tune with it than she is. But I thought, how beautiful. And I think it would be really valuable information to know, like, when ovulation is happening, especially if you are in a heterosexual couple that is trying to conceive or not conceive. It would be nice if the burden, quote unquote, of tracking those things was not just on one person. To know a little bit about what are likely symptoms in this time, and then for the partner specifically, how to best be supportive during this time. Oh my God.
Yes. I think it would be amazing. Somebody invent this, and Erin, you'll get author credit.
Yeah. TM.
Yeah. It'll be a period app for men.
Right?
Or partners, or homosexual partners as well, because even though there isn't the partner sort of conception, Because if you're a female homosexual couple, you're most likely, if you are going to have a baby, you're going to do surrogacy or IVF or some other situation, or you're just going to like bone one of your male friends just for his sperm. Like, so it might
Lots
still
of options.
be, it might still be a situation, but even, if you're in a same sex, female couple, just having that moral support on either end. So I absolutely think, yeah, a period app for partners. You heard it here first.
And then specifically, like, you're not allowed to bring up that it must be related to the period if somebody's angry with you. Like, that's an important part.
Can we stop doing that? Can we stop saying like, oh, you're in a shitty mood, you must be PMSing? More so like, you seem very emotional right now. Is there a way that I can support you in this, this period of your cycle?
Right.
That's a whole other topic.
Yes, because very rarely am I upset about something when I'm PMSing that isn't like a real thing. It may be heightened for me.
It's amplified. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still a real thing. That's actually one of the ways that we knew I was pregnant, is because my hormones were so heightened that I started bawling because my husband was going to go hang out with his best friend, and I didn't want him to leave me, which doesn't sound like me at all. So much so that he has this like special voice that he puts on when I know that like I've moved to a space where he realized that I'm not rational and he's just trying to like help me, like it's not he's just helping now. And it's so like soothing that I can't even be mad when he's doing it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel pain. He's like, okay, babe. All right, babe.
Then you were like, let me go to the Dollar Tree and get a pregnancy test.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
Oh, goodness.
So lonely when you leave my side. Not who I am.
No,
anyway.
Not at all. So, all right. In closing, learn to track your period as best you can based on your birth control situation, getting in touch with your body, massaging your uterus, not treating your menses like it's a gross, disgusting, shameful thing, and just learning to kind of connect with your body via your menstrual cycle and maybe even talk about it with some people that you trust.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. What an amazing world if we were all doing that.
I know. Well, thank you for being with us here today and giving us the space to wax poetic about menstrual cycles.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.